Hey folks, this is Ben Gessel. How's it going? Yeah, it's good. It's great actually getting to these videos. It really is. I just wish I was able to speak a little better right now. Yeah. Anyway, so this is at least the last of these videos I'm going to be making. In this way. I'll be talking about the Middle East and India and Central Asia somewhat with this video. Thoughts on the Middle East and Central Asia and India, and I'll maybe touch on North Africa as well. Maybe, yeah. So, but let's just start out really quick with, and I mentioned this probably already in my thoughts about Africa. Let's just start out with a few more things about Egypt, because, you know, although I don't have anything against Moroccans and Algerians, those guys, I've heard some bad things about some of those folks in Europe. I know some of these folks, and I just think that when again we're talking about young North African men in particular, it's nothing personal, right? It's definitely nothing. It's definitely nothing personal. I think it's just, you know, Islam is pretty stringent, can be in some respects, and when you're a guy, especially a young guy, and you're not in your home country and you're in a country that is more party hardy, man, so yeah, it's basically that. I mean, I understand sometimes what's happening there in that respect. I just think that, again, there's some things that need to still happen for North Africans to not be seen as rapscallions, which I know they aren't. You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't dislike North Africans. I understand some of what's going on and why it's going on. I just think that, again, they just need to conduct themselves in such a way that they don't disgrace their parents. Okay, so that being said, so again, I haven't really met too many people from Egypt, as I mentioned before. I do think well of Egypt. I most certainly do. I just know that I just haven't met too many people from Egypt. Although that's the best way of putting it. But let's get right to it here, though. Starting with Saudi Arabia. No, the Arabs I've known, I know there's technically these little differences. There's Palestinians, or Palestinian Arabs, and then of course Yemen is different. That's more like East Africa, and yeah, they're definitely darker skinned, like Africans. I know. And there's Oman, and there's United Arab Emirates, and then there's Kuwait and Qatar and I don't know, Bahrain, and another city that I'm trying to think of right off the bat that I can't think of right now. That's really Red Sea. And there's also I don't know if you call them Jordanians, essentially still Arabs, and the related Syrian and Iraqi Sunnis and Shiites, and these are all in the Arab bubble, I suppose you could say, or they can be referred to, for the most part, as Arabs. And I tend to think well of Arabs overall. I just know that these are the sorts of folks that will be very bit more straightforward with me about what they think about something. And I've always had good relationships with Arabs. It's never gone south. If it does, I know that there can be very intense people, but I know they mean well in general. For all the Arabs I've ever known, and again, if they're more Americanized, if they're American, it's American. But I really haven't met too many people that are Iraqi though, nor have I met really anybody that's Assyrian. I've only known Palestinians, and they were great guys, and they were goofy, and they liked to just joke around. And there was maybe another guy I knew who was Arab when I was in college in Central Washington, and a lot of these guys just want to have a good time. It's like America is the place to have a good time, and maybe Europe too. And so, kind of what I've been saying before a little bit, maybe life is a little bit less party hardy and more, obey your elders. In Arabia. I wouldn't know firsthand. I don't know. I just know that this is a thing. This is a thing, and it's nothing personal. And I know it's really easy to get these days to get worked up and angry with Muslims and stuff. And this is a really big thing still that everybody needs to realize. Look, it's guys are guys and women are women, and it's not like these Arabs are these evil, demonic, whatever guys. They're just guys, and they want to have a good time, and they need to behave themselves just like everybody else. And yeah, and it's easy to, look at these Islam versus Christian things, and gosh, if it isn't what's happening in Europe, it's like, there's issues with India and Pakistan, there's issues with China and the Uyghur, and this is one of these hot button topics, when it comes to Arabs and Islam. And everybody tries to avoid on some level, a lot of people do. But again, just the crux of it is this. It's hard to be a good boy sometimes. And it's hard when you have cultural differences and how you're supposed to be a good boy, right? And ultimately there is no really huge difference between an Arab dude and an English dude. There's different cultures, probably expect some differences on some level, but if talking about women or men, there's still going to be things that. So I tend to see Arab guys, more, both men and women, but I tend to see Arabs as my brothers. I don't see Arabs as being wicked. I've always tried to understand Islam better. And as a Mormon, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I do see a lot in common with Islam. I most certainly do. And also, as much as they would hate to sometimes, depending on the person, as much as they might hate to see this or say this, Judaism is also, well, there you go. I just lit off the atom bomb. No, but basically, yeah, we're all talking about monotheistic religions here. Christianity and Judaism and Islam. They're all from Jerusalem. There's a common cultural heritage. It's just that the Christians were pretty much more in Europe, and the Jews were kind of scattered all over the place after they were scattered. And Islam, we're talking about Middle East and North Africa and other places like that in the south of Asia and stuff. And yeah, but they all kind of came from Middle East, Jerusalem or Mecca, So it's no big thing, I mention all this because this is also kind of trying to understand Arabs better. I've read at least the Old Testament or much of it. If you guys are familiar with, if you're familiar with Old Jewish culture from a long time ago, you're probably going to be kind of familiar somewhat with Arab culture, in my opinion. As much as they would hate that comparison, as much as they would say, no, we're different, there's still some similarities. I mean, you can even just talk about the fact that we're talking about mostly desert here, and eating a lot of dates, and going, using a camel to get to different places, and a lot of times, and, you know, oases and you know, traditions of hospitality and all these things. The patriarchal aspect of both cultures, both Israel and the Arab countries. This is all pretty familiar stuff to me, but again, as you can probably guess, I have not been to Saudi Arabia, nor have I been to any of these other smaller countries that would be considered Arab. But I have known somebody who is from, I believe it was the United Arab Emirates. And I'm going to talk about the other countries here in a bit. I know what you guys are probably thinking here. Basically, my experience with Arabs are that they can be very intellectual, very sharp folks. Yeah, and there's a real thing about the modern technologically savvy, more wealthy lifestyle and things going on in the Middle East, and the more secular, somewhat more secular way of seeing things compared to the, of course, not too long ago, or even still going on kind of thing, a very authoritarian, conservative Islamic culture. And of all areas in the world, I don't know if I'd use the word conservative, I suppose maybe in a way, yes, but of all areas in the world, the Middle East is, we'll just say at least, especially Saudi Arabia and similar nations around it, are very theocratic, I think is. They put a ton of stock in Islam. You know, like you are an Islam member of, you are Muslim, whatever. We are Islam. You are a Muslim. I mean, it's Muslim. It's you know, there are commandments and there are things you do, there are things you don't do, and this is, you know, so this is an, you know, it's different in many other countries where we will allow people to believe what they want to believe. It's not that way so much in the Middle East. I get that. This is something I'm not personally familiar with, but even though it seems very oppressive and wrong in a way, depending on how you feel about Islam, of course, I'm at least say that there are many good things that this religion teaches. So, there you go. So basically when you talk, you know, okay, so again, I haven't known a whole lot of people from Saudi Arabia or similar countries. But this is my frame of reference here. Is basically Islam, with, you know, a few people I've known from that Arabian. No, I've known some folks from Persia or Iran. All right, that, and I want to make sure I say this. I know these are two different countries. They are two distinct countries. Although they have certain similarities, I understand they're different, and I understand that both of these countries and peoples want to be seen as distinct peoples. And so I understand this. In Persia, right, Iran has a lot of interesting things about it. I think it was, talking about Zoroastrianism, the birthplace of, I think, even magic. There's a lot of intellectual things that talk about with Iran, and connections with, again, Russia and Europe and the rest of the Middle East and India. But I tend to think well of Persians and Iranians in general, and I know some folks that are Persian, and I know there's still a lot of things, as previously mentioned, that are a little bit touchy subjects, and they don't know what they are, and I know. But it's just, I can also say this, that I feel like these people are, particularly if they're guys in these cultures, in these nations, particularly if they're men, I can really feel like I can chat with them, especially in the United States and the West, where these folks feel also less pressured to say certain things, kind of in a similar way but a different way than the Chinese. When I can have an honest and open conversation with folks in the Middle East and respectful conversation, it's awesome, And they are often more willing to say what they're really feeling, especially in the United States. And man, I love it. But there's you guys would be surprised how many similarities, especially with Iran, there are with European thought. And I just want those connections to continue to increase in strength. No, I haven't known too many Turks. Not really. So I really shouldn't talk too much about Turkey. But I understand the general gist of the culture, I suppose. But it's maybe I'll just hold off on Turkey for a while until I've known more people from Turkey. But yeah. But yeah, I understand a lot about the country. Now, again, similar thing with Central Asia. I just haven't known anybody from Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan or Tajikistan or Turkmenistan. I've not really. So, again, I wish I could say more. I've studied these countries, intellectually and reading books and things. And just haven't known too many people from these countries. So I'm going to have to leave it at that. I do apologize, but I definitely know a lot about Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and, well, yeah, so that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time here in this video on, basically. So, yeah, Pakistan. Again, it's not people I've known. There are some Pakistanis I've known, but they're often hard to. And there's, of course, people from Afghanistan. A few people I've known from Afghanistan. Different tribes there. Hazara and stuff. We're talking about Afghanistan. They actually do seem a little bit like either Russians or Persians. I see Afghanis, like Tajik and a lot of Central Asians as being almost European, I mean, yeah, like, are you Russian kind of thing? There's a little bit of, but, so, I mean, it's kind of in the middle of the world, so again, you're going to get both it's like a Eurasian thing. You're going to get some Asiatic, but mostly, in my opinion, Turkic, European features and qualities and things. And I guess, talking about Pakistan, we're starting to get into the Indian subcontinent a little bit. We're getting there. And talking about the Pashtun and the Punjabi. And, other tribes I know that are bordering Iran, the Bashkir and stuff. So I know that there's a very different well, I've seen folks, the folks that have like the different turbans and the different kinds of things that, they wear on their heads. And there are folks that have a red dot on their forehead, more in India. And I'm trying to learn always a bit more about specifics about trying to keep all these different groups straight in my mind. And sometimes it's a ethnicity, sometimes it's a religion you're talking about. But I do understand that Pakistan in general is more, a little bit more militarily minded. At least their government is. But you're probably going to get a little bit more straightforward, a direct kind of conversations with Pakistanis compared to the more diplomatic tendencies of many folks from India. So I haven't known too many Pakistanis. I really haven't. And again, we're talking about sometimes these groups like the Punjabi that are right in the border. So it's hard to always know for me who's from Pakistan, who's from India. And I suppose if I was from England or lived in London, maybe I'd understand the subject better. But I just have had more experience personally with folks from India. So, and particularly with certain tribes like the Telugu language and tribe folks, and thereabouts, Hyderabad and stuff. But I know that, for instance, the food we often have in Indian restaurants in the United States is more from the north of India and on the border of Pakistan and India. So all like the naan bread and a lot of the lamb and a lot of the certain kinds of spices, maybe paprika, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's northern Indian. And then more to the south and east of India, it's, of course, more rice and shrimp and more vegetables and more teas and more, little less meat and bread kind of stuff. So, sorry, Pakistan, I have to go on to India here. No hard feelings. I know that you're kind of still, the government's not in good favor. I know we keep hearing in the news about this stuff that you guys know what I'm talking about. I just know that there's a nation, this is a nation of over 200 million people, so it's nothing personal, obviously. I just know that there's some stuff that's still going to be happening here with, Pakistan and, But I've seen videos of people from India having great conversations with people from Pakistan, so there's only so much, the government can make somebody do, I'll put it that way. Governments can train you to hate some other country, but when you know people from other countries, it's a good thing, because then you don't want to just go to war to kill them. But although I'm no hippie, I definitely am also kind of, I don't like war. Yeah. So let's just talk about India here for a bit. Okay. So, of course, I'm familiar with Gandhi. Who isn't? Right? Of course. And yes, as many other Americans are, I'm very familiar with Apu from The Simpsons. And I realize that many people that are Indian, whether they're Indian or Indian American or whatever, really tire of either the Gandhi thing or the Apu thing. I get it. I get it. And, probably the teasing about the accent, the Russell Peters stuff, that probably goes over a little better, but sometimes it gets a little bit irksome. That I never laugh at anybody if they have a particularly slightly humorous accent. That's not something I ever do. I never do it. I might laugh at a exaggerated Indian accent of some sort, if it's a little bit humorous. But I often find Indian accents, if speaking English, of course, but in general, it's something more relaxing. I've always found, that's the best way of putting it. And I know a lot of folks, that you guys are familiar with the scammers, I know, and the call center stuff. And there's a lot of things about India I know that aren't so great. And the latrine issue or the poop issue. I get it. I know. There's a lot of things. Yes. I know. But again, we're talking about a nation of easily over 1 billion people. Yeah, they're basically running up there with China now. So I mentioned how populous China was and how hard it was to sum up my feelings about China. India is the same way. And so there's a lot of good things and some things that aren't so great. Sure. And there are differences between these different peoples in India. There's the Gujarat and, Maharashtra, whatever. There are tribes that are peoples that are closer up to the north and the west of India, closer to Punjabi and the Pashtun. There's also the Kashmir, way up there in the north, and then you have the Hindi going over the Ganges River, eventually get to the Bengali, and even Sikkim and some other folks that are more Asiatic actually in appearance. At least around when you get close to Burma and stuff. And by the way, I wanted to mention I don't know anybody from Burma or Myanmar, so that's also kind of a mysterious country somewhat still. But I do think well of that country. I know there's many different tribes I don't know about very much of, like, you know their names though, the Karen, the Mon, all these guys, but they're probably not too far removed from the Thai or the Laotian, etc. folks. So, and then of course you have these different other provinces. I'm trying to remember the name of. Some that are longer named, but I'm more familiar with the Telugu tribe, or the Telugu folks. And a lot of folks in the United States are from this area of kind of southeastern or South India. And a little different than the Tamil or Dravidians. But I know, so the Telugu I'm very familiar with, and I love these folks. And very friendly folks, very kind folks in general. And yeah, I click with them pretty well, I think. Gujarat, of course, and a lot of folks closer to Pakistan have more like in the European kind of features, whatever. I'm less familiar again with Dravidian folks. Really, I just haven't hardly met anybody Tamil Dravidian. Not too many, but I have good feelings about these guys. And I haven't met anybody from Sri Lanka. Only one guy from Mauritius, which is closer into Africa. Good feelings, you know. I know that there's some issues with the Tamil Tigers and things, and as well as some other folks that are kind of crazy, like the Sentinelese, that are basically an Africanish type of tribe on the east, the Andaman Islands. So there's a lot of these isolated tropical areas. Of course, there's a lot of isolated areas of India, and tropical areas like that in general. But there's a lot of sort of isolated areas that are just different, you know, than the Indian subcontinent in general. And then, of course, I've met a few guys from Tibet or Nepal. They're really cool guys. They really are. I really like them a lot. But my overall feeling about people from India is they're very kind and very friendly. And I kind of see the country as being, again, very distinct from all other countries. It's different. They're different than Middle East somewhat. They're different than China. Different than Europe, European countries, or Africa. Different Africa. If I were to pick certain countries that are more like, it's often, I guess there's kind of a link again between Persia and India, and with Pakistan, Afghanistan being in the middle there. But I don't know. I think the Persians are a little bit more. No. I just think that a lot of folks from India. No, actually, you know what? A lot of folks try to be diplomatic. I guess it's just that the Hindu culture kind of permeates India a little bit, and the non-violence thing. In Pakistan, I know, is unique that way, and then you have, you know, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, Um, I see the similarities between these countries, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. I just think that with Indian culture, they've always been a little bit more prone to want to say, hey, folks, before we get out the bazookas, can we chat about this a little bit more? That's the best way of putting it. And maybe the Persians aren't that far behind. And maybe it's just the government we're talking about. But again, Persia, Iran is very, like I said, it's very European almost, to me. Yeah. And so there's yeah. There's a long history here, I know, of Caucasian, Dravidians mixing or meeting at some point in India. But the Caucasian, or I guess you say Aryan types of folks, being a bit more straightforward. And some of them kind of warlike. Dravidians maybe just kind of being, as far as I can tell, a bit more I'm okay, you're okay. Let's just kind of farm and call it good. Kind of. I guess I know that they can be more intense than that too, but so to sum up here a little bit, you do have kind of two main, in my opinion. And by the way, I've known lots of folks from India, so lots of folks. I'm not getting it too much into all these different things, but I say it's a growing number of folks I've known in the computer industry and stuff. But you really have kind of the Muslim world and the Hindu world here, so to speak. You have India and you have Arabia, and you have Persia, but Persia's Muslim, kind of, they're Shiite, but yet they have a lot in common with India. And I think in general, again, I know that if there's a lot of wars and things going on with this area, and it's just something to keep in mind that it's governments and it's there's some rivalries. There's a lot of rivalries that have to be remedied. Not just Israel versus Saudi Arabia, etc., the Muslim world, but there's also Iraq and Iran, somewhat. There's Pakistan and India. There's Islam or Muslims versus Hindus, and many other things like this. And so, yeah, hopefully you guys are able to get something out of this. But again,